Welcome to Real Estate Game Changers Radio, featuring real estate trendsetters and industry influencers, sharing tips and strategies to help home buyers and home sellers get the most out of their next real estate transaction. Now, here's your host, Suzanne Doyle-Ingram.
Hello, this is your host, Suzanne Doyle-Ingram of the Real Estate Game Changers Radio, and I am so excited to have a wonderful guest on our show today. Her name is Monica Rivera, and she is fantastic. You're going to love what she has to say. She calls herself a Millennial Realtor, so we're going to learn about that today. She's also a career consultant for Keller Williams Realty, and she's built her business on an empowerment and technology-based platform. So we're going to find out about that too. She's really passionate about making an impact in the real estate industry, and she is kind of a big deal. She has shared the stage with Kevin Harrington of ABC Shark Tank, and she's been featured on multiple media outlets, including the Huffington Post, Behind the Hustle, and Clarity FM. And after consulting and building several successful businesses in various niches, from real estate to fashion to consumer products, and one of them even hit six figures in under 6 months, she's really gotten focused on what she loves most, which is empowering people to gain financial freedom by investing in real estate and helping people pursue a career as an agent or both. And so Monica sells real estate in the greater Los Angeles area, and she uses her extensive marketing background to provide a next level marketing plan to get her clients' homes sold fast. And she uses things like geo-targeting, and it's just amazing what she does. And like I said, she specializes in working with the millennial home buyers, and that's something that is really fascinating to me. So we're going to understand what the unique challenges her clients have because they're millennials. And the other thing I want to say about Monica is that she believes very strongly in giving back to the community, and she contributes a portion of every commission to the Give Back Homes mission to build homes for families in need throughout the U.S. and Central America. So welcome to the show, Monica.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate, having this opportunity.
Oh, it's wonderful, and I just am so excited that you could make time. I know how busy you are, and it was hard to find a time, but here we are today. It's wonderful. So the first thing I want to ask you is, I'd really love to know more about how you got into the real estate business.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of joke that I've been in real estate forever. My dad, bought apartments when I was really young, and so I was very little when he would take me with him to go, see the different apartments that he was working on, see the ones that he was buying. And when I was 17 and I was learning to drive, that was around the crash, and so he would take me to home auctions with him, and that's how I learned to drive.
Neat.
And then I went into property management and acquisitions. My dad kept telling me to get a license. He's actually a licensed real estate agent himself. He kept telling me to get a license, and being, the stubborn person, we kind of don't want to listen to our parents all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know what that's like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so after college, I ended up actually getting into property management and acquisitions. And so for the past 8 years, I've been on the property management acquisition side. That's actually the company that I sold my equity in November and got into the sales side of things. And by the time, I got out of that, we were doing collegiate housing. By the time I got out, we had over 15 employees, 700 tenants. We were servicing all types of collegiate areas, and I was seeing a lot more on what the benefits were of actually being on the real estate side and how I could then bring my expertise to this area. So that is how I got into the sales side of things.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's really neat how sometimes you can't predict where your career is going to go, and then when you get to it, you love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me about that. What do you love about your career in real estate?
I'm so glad that you asked that. When it comes to real estate, my favorite thing about it's honestly, it's helping people. Mm-hmm. When I first decided to get into real estate, I think part of the reason that I was so stubborn about it for the longest time was, for me, it felt really corporate, kind of going into that vibe. And I had been an entrepreneur for a really long time. And so when I sold the property management company, my grandma got really sick around that time. You know, she's elderly, and because I had time off, it was the first time that I had time off ever. I'm a kind of a workaholic.
Yes.
I
know what you
staying
mean.
with it. Yeah, I think we all kind of get into that where we're always working. And, you know, I had some free time, and I started helping with her home care.
Oh, good.
And she told me so many stories, and there was one that really resonated with me. She came here from Mexico. She came with my grandfather. They actually left their kids in Mexico when they came. She worked in factories for a really long time and, was trying to build a home for her family.
That must have been so hard.
Yeah. And they were away from family for over a year, before they were able to bring them over.
Yeah.
And the first thing she told me she did, she invested in a property. And it was a 3-unit. So instead of just a house, they bought a 3-unit property that, the family could live in one, and they rented out the other 2.
Smart woman.
And when she told me the story, she said something in Spanish. She said, "Hay que sembrar para cosechar," which means you have to plant the seeds in order to reap the harvest.
Yes.
And and that resonated with me, and that's where I realized that she planted that seed of creating this multi-generational wealth for herself with a house that takes care of her to this day. She now owns multiple pieces of property, and so do her kids. And that was what made me realize that getting into real estate, it wasn't just, buying and selling houses and getting a commission check. It's helping people create that.
Create wealth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And security.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And what a great opportunity for you to be able to spend time with your grandmother in such an intimate level, right? Taking care of her and nurturing her, and it's so nice to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, and you say your area, I know you're in Los Angeles, but is there a specific area that you work in?
I serve the greater Los Angeles area. I actually do a little bit of the Inland Empire. My dad joined my team, and he's located out in Chino. I'm in LA, and my office is in Downey.
Oh, neat.
So, we service that entire area. Because it's such a mix of different cultures, and you don't get people that are looking to just buy in one area. There's people who like a certain vibe, and they're going to get that in different areas.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So when speaking of, thinking of your clients and, your buyers and your sellers, and would you say that you have a specialty? And if so, what would it be?
Definitely. So on the buyer side, right, I specialize in a lot of first-time home buyers. I work with a lot of millennials and young professionals that are, they're looking for either a first home or a first investment property. Okay. So I get a lot of those on the buyer side. On the seller side, it's going to be a little bit different. On the seller side, my specialty is understanding buyer psychology. And, I've done a lot of training in terms, I was a communication major in college, and then I studied communication and rapport, high-level negotiation, advanced sales techniques. I'm certified by the International Business and Entrepreneurship Association in those fields. Oh, great. And it allows me to really understand buyers on a different level, where I know, what it is they're looking for, how their motivations drive pricing, what they're seeing when they come into a house. And that allows me to really work with my sellers to make sure that we're, pricing it right, pricing it competitively, and using all the tactics that are available to then reach those buyers and reach their inner level motivations to get the home sold fast.
Oh, I think that's really, really interesting. Absolutely. So it's not really about looking at the house and here's the features of the house. It's like, what does the potential buyer want from this house?
Yes.
And why do they want it? And then how do we find that?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
That's really cool. I mean, real estate has changed so much. And I'm from a real estate family too. My mom was a realtor for 25 years, and we still talk about real estate at the dinner table when she's actually visiting me right now. And it's so neat when we still talk about it, because I work with so many realtors now, and I love talking to realtors because I just think it's amazing and just so fascinating. And, in my business, I help people, and it's not really dissimilar to what you do. But now what's changed is all the different ways of marketing. It's just amazing. And I mentioned in your introduction that you were a millennial realtor working with millennials. So could you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. So for me, being a millennial is just what generation I'm a part of. Mm-hmm. And each generation has, specific characteristics. For me, I'm a digital native, right? So I understand technology on a really high level, mm-hmm. and I'm all about empowering the consumer. So when it comes to working with millennials and the unique challenges they face, we have a lot of these young professionals who are coming out of college and they want to buy a home. And they have a lot of struggles when it comes to, what debt they already have accumulated, and making sure that we're, finding the best way for them to then gain equity and put equity into a home. So, there's certain things that they face on that level. And then also they want information. That's huge right now. We grew up in an age where you can find everything on the internet. And when we come to working with real estate agents, I feel like we're in an age of what I like to call Uber Realty, where there's this fear, right? I don't know if you've heard of Richard Barton. He's the founder of Expedia that revolutionized the travel industry and kind of stomped out a lot of travel agents. Mm-hmm. And he also founded Zillow.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you get a lot of agents who have a fear that what happened with Expedia is going to happen with programs like Zillow, because it changed that being the gatekeeper of the multiple listing service, and gave access to the consumer. Yeah, and a lot of agents are still really protective of the information, mm-hmm. because they think that it's going to take away the need for a real estate agent, and I don't think that at all. I think the more value, the more information that we're able to give, then the more likely somebody is to trust us and want to work with us.
Yeah, I think that's
and that's definitely, and so that's where I come from. It's giving that information and being able to empower people and help them, whether they decide to work with me or not, because, I want to help people as much as possible. That's the business that I'm in. Real estate just happens to be a part of it.
Right. Yeah. That's so true. And I think going back to what you were saying, I think it's that level of transparency that, when I worked at Realty World, talk about working your whole life. I started working when I was 14 and I had 3 jobs, and one of them was at Realty World.
Oh, that's incredible.
I know, right? And it's like women like us that are ambitious and we love our work. It's just so much fun that it's really, next week I'm going away to my friend's cabin and there's no cell service and no internet, and I'm having a bit of anxiety because I'm like, how am I going to work? Like, oh, wait a second, I'm supposed to be on vacation. So, I got to get my head around that. But I think it's true. Like back in the day, the realtors that I worked with, they would have the big, huge, thick black and white MLS books that came out once a week, and they would choose. They would say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I know what's best for you because I am the authority here, and I'm going to choose these 6 houses for you to go see. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith wouldn't even know there's any other on the market because there was no internet back then. Now it's all just completely transparent. And I think what you're saying,
and now everything's there.
Yeah, they know everything, but then they need you to guide them because you have all the experience and the education that they don't have. So I think that's really, really important that you're guiding them. So speaking of guiding, what would you say are your guiding principles as a business person?
For me, it's all about coming from a place of integrity, coming from a place of passion, coming from service, being authentic. I also, I have a lot of family values, and that gets really incorporated into what I do in real estate, because I think that, making a purchase that's so big, a lot of times we bring our family with us, or that impacts, what type of decisions we're making. And then, helping people build a legacy. Those are the things that guide me, just having that integrity and that passion and coming from a place of service always.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like to me like you're very practical too. So if somebody's going to make an emotional buying decision, you can say, okay, let's just think about this for a minute.
Yeah, it's funny. People will tell me, no, don't tell them about that because, then they're not going to want to buy the house, like when we come to an inspection or that period. And for me, I'm like, no, I want to put everything on the table because this is the biggest purchase you're making. Yeah. So let me tell you so that I'm transparent and I want to put everything on the table, and I want to respect my clients, and their decisions and give them that empowerment to then make an educated decision on their own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what your job is. That's what you've got to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So when you're working with sellers, say someone comes to you and says, Monica, I need to sell my home really quickly. So tell me what advice you would give them.
Absolutely. Well, there's three big keys. I'd say one, make sure that I would stage it. If they're really looking to sell it quickly, some people aren't in the position to be able to stage it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So with that, we'd come in and maybe do some cleaning, do repairs, make sure that it looks in the best condition possible. And a lot of times when you come into a home and you're talking to the seller, they have an emotional connection to their home, and so they can feel a little bit uncomfortable with that. But I always tell them, put your buyer hat on. I know that you have a beautiful home and that this has an emotional attachment for you. Mm-hmm. And the buyer doesn't know that. The buyer wants to come in and see themselves in the home. Mm-hmm. So that's one part of it. The second part I would do is definitely tell them to increase the commission on the side of the buyer's representing agent. And that's just, at the end of the day, the MLS, a lot of times when people are negotiating their commissions, I see a lot of agents that negotiate their commission down and they take it away from the buyer agent side. And what happens is that buyer's agents go into the MLS, they can search the MLS by the commission.
Yeah.
So when they see a lower commission, that house is not getting as much exposure, even though it might fit the criteria of those buyers, because that buyer's agent doesn't want to do the same amount of work for less money. And I'm not saying that's ethical. I don't condone that at all.
Yeah.
But coming from a marketing perspective, understanding that and letting our sellers know that if they actually increase the commission on that side, not on our side as the listing agent, but on the side of the buyer's agent, they're going to get more exposure for their home. And then pricing it right.
Okay, good. Yeah. Next point. Before you talk about that, let me get back to this, what you're just saying. That is fascinating, and I've never had anyone say that before. And I think that it's true because you can talk to the seller about what it would cost them to have their house on the market longer versus to sell it quicker. So absolutely, the money difference is probably, the same or less to give a little bit more commission to the buyer's agent.
Yeah, and the longer you keep the house on the market, if it doesn't sell, if it's not getting enough exposure, it's priced wrong, a lot of, sellers will want to price it higher, not understanding that they're not going to get as much competition on the home, and it's going to drive the price down, so they end up with less money in their pocket.
Yeah.
Or they're worried about the commission because they think that you're taking money from what they're going to get at the end of the day, and don't realize that most of the time when agents are negotiating their commission, they're lowering the buyer's side, which then again gets less exposure on their home and drives the price down. Anywhere from about 2 to 6% is what we see on average of the home price driving down if it doesn't sell in the first 2 weeks.
Wow. Interesting. And then speaking of pricing, that was your third point I think you were going to say about if someone says I want to sell my home quickly.
Absolutely. So pricing it right, pricing it competitively. I always look or give the analogy of, eBay, right? You go on eBay and you see something that's listed on full price and you're less likely to purchase it. And then you see something else that you can bid on and it's lower price, lower below what it is. And you get into kind of this auction frenzy or this bidder frenzy where now you're competing against other buyers and you're getting emotionally attached to the competition and not necessarily to the price, and that drives prices up. Yeah, and sometimes you can actually get above list just by creating that type of environment where you get this bidder mentality going on.
Right. But I bet it's a very fine line between, you don't want to price it too low.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that must be, I know you just use your experience and the comparables and everything else.
Yeah, and also, it also depends on the seller on what you always need to work with them, but you need to showcase why, it should be priced a certain way. I won't take, something that is an above market listing that they are adamant about, having it priced higher because a lot of agents will because they want to have their signage in the yard. But for me, I would never want to get the reputation that I'm not able to sell a property for my client. I want to, and it's a disservice to them if I'm just taking the listing so that I can have signage in the yard, knowing that it's not priced to sell. And I let my buyers know that up front. And and that for me, that's, you asked about guiding principles, and one of mine is having that integrity to be able to say no to a listing because I know that it's a disservice to the seller.
And again, it goes back to transparency too, where you're really honest about it and you're just saying it's not going to sell at that price. So, and it's a waste of their time. And also their and I don't mean, people always use, it's a waste of my time as a cliche, but I mean, having your home in top condition to be ready is so much time, in terms of like cleaning and having it show ready, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what I wanted to ask you is, when thinking about, marketing, and how does a millennial realtor do that differently? And then I touched on before in terms of, technology and that kind of thing. And how do you, you don't have to give away all your secrets, but what's different about a millennial realtor in terms of the marketing that you do?
Absolutely. So I do a couple things. One, I know, a lot of realtors we call it the 3 Ps, right? You put a sign in the yard, you post it on the MLS, and then you pray. And
I never heard that one before. That's funny.
For me, I say I do the next 2 Ps, and one of those is prospecting. Make sure that you're actively prospecting for leads in the area. Another is price watch, right? You want to make sure that you know about what's going on in the market in terms of price. And for prospecting, since that's more of the focus on the marketing side of things, I make sure that my listings are syndicated to every site that's out there. So I syndicate my listings to over about 800 different sites that are on the internet to make sure they're getting the most exposure. I also do geo-targeting, and what that means is that what I'm doing is, now your listing, you have this home, and let's say right now I have a listing that's out in Chino. Right, in Chino, California. And so what I do is I'm taking that zip code and that surrounding zip code for that listing. I'm promoting that, but only to people that are in a buying age range, and also who have expressed interest in homeownership by liking websites like Zillow, by liking websites like Trulia, because we know they're actively looking, and who make a certain income ratio for that house that are then going to be able to purchase that house. And that, I just gave a lot of details and a lot of secrets.
Wow. No, but you know what? I still don't know how.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And doing that, now this home is literally in front and following around these potential buyers. And so you're getting even more exposure through there. And, I do a number of other things, but those are kind of some of the really technology driven things that I'm including in my marketing.
And when you explain that to a potential listing, a potential seller, someone who you're chatting with, and they're like, Monica, we're thinking about selling our home. How are you going to do? How would you do that for us? Giving them all that information doesn't mean they can turn around and do it. They have no idea how to do that themselves. I mean, I have no idea how to do that. I'm like,
and wow. I'm lucky I had, a lot of the business training and marketing. Yeah. I handled all of the marketing in the property management company before, and then I worked with various marketing firms. So I brought all of that expertise to the real estate business.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh. So tell me about, again, I was saying in your intro about how you give back to your community. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Definitely. So I'm a big believer that money is beautiful when it's aimed in the right direction. Ooh. And one of the ways that I do that, I'm a partner of an amazing organization called Give Back Homes. What we do is I donate one on a monthly basis, and then I donate also a portion of every commission to the organization, and we participate in home builds. So we build homes for families in need throughout the United States and Central America. And, that's one of the organizations that I am a big believer in. I see, homes, they change people's lives, when somebody is able to have that shelter. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. And a couple other ways, I do motivational speaking at a lot of high schools, and I do professional workshops for different colleges.
Oh, that's great. And getting back to the homes, do you actually get a hammer and nails?
Yeah, so when we have local builds, or if I want to fly out, like if we're doing a build, they just did a build in Nicaragua that I wasn't able to go to. But, we have builds within, Southern California, all throughout the United States. When there's one down here that I'm able to participate in, then yes, I go and I participate in the builds.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's really great. Yeah. Good for you. That must feel so good.
It does, to know that not only am I helping people to buy their own homes and make their own investments and have that multi-generational wealth, we're also, not just me, but me and my clients and my team, we're then also helping and creating that ripple effect to help other people have homes as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it really does change their life, because I can't even imagine what a stress that would be and some of them may not necessarily be homeless, but they may be living in little ramshackle lean-to things or something, right? Just, terrible. And to have, just
I'm getting goosebumps just hearing about it, just talking about it right now.
I know, me too. I'm very involved with food. I volunteer at my local food bank. So the two main things are food and shelter, right?
And shelter, yeah.
Being able to give back like that it is just so amazing. It's so amazing. We had a guy come to the food bank just on Wednesday when I was there, and he had lost everything in a house fire, and he was kind of like, it was his first time coming to the food bank. And sometimes when people come, and my job is to register the new people, and sometimes they're really grateful, but sometimes they're very emotional, and they're like, I can't even believe I'm here. Like, this is crazy. And I'm like, it's okay. That's what we're here for. And then he didn't even realize. I said, okay, well, what do you need? Do you need clothes? You need this? You need that? Like, but we can hook you up, because people don't realize how many, opportunities there are, in most communities, but they just got to get the information. But, good for you for doing that. That's so great.
Thank you. No, and the giving back, that culture, that's one of the reasons that I, chose the brokerage. I'm with Keller Williams, which we're right now the largest the United States. But one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about with this company is we actually do, we do a couple of things on a national scale. We have what we call our KW Red Day, where every single office globally shuts down for a day to give back. First, we do service things in our local communities, which, is incredible, because you have the same day that we're shut down, our agents in Mexico, in the UK, in Asia, everyone is shut down at the same time.
I never heard about that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's it. We do a lot of service, and that's why I love the culture of the company.
Mm-hmm. I worked on a book with, I published books for realtors, and one of them is this amazing woman in San Diego, and she works for Keller Williams too, and she's that same type of person as you, where she's just constantly giving back and helping others, and I think it's part of your work culture with Keller Williams. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's so great. So let me ask you, now the name of this show is Real Estate Game Changers. So just to put you on the spot for a moment, what do you think makes you a real estate game changer, Monica?
Absolutely. I think that for me, being a game changer in the industry is really always coming from this empowerment-based platform, right? That truly, I see the fear of wanting, again, I talked about it earlier, of just giving that knowledge away. And for me, I'm a big believer in letting people know and holding to that always, and doing everything I can to make sure that I'm constantly helping the consumer. And I do that by constantly learning, by constantly educating myself, by knowing what the new technology is, and by sharing that information.
Good.
So I think for me, that's my big, my game changer moment.
I think so too. I do. And I want to thank you so much for being on this interview today. It's been wonderful. I could speak to you for hours, I think.
It'd be
nicer to do it in person though, but, so let our listeners know if they want to get in touch with you, whether it's for maybe for real estate, obviously, or, just chatting with you about some of your ways that you give back to your community. Can you give us your website and maybe your phone number if you're comfortable, and Facebook, or how they can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm reachable my name is Monica Rivera. My website is monicarivera.com. My email, it's really easy. It's monica@monicarivera.com. And my phone number is 562-354-0294. So feel free to give me a call. And I'm also all over social media. With that, you can find me at Monica BMH. So that's going to be MONICA BMH. And that's for Twitter, Instagram. I'm on pretty much I'm on a couple other Periscope, Pinterest.
Wow. Oh my God.
I'm all over the place.
Because you're a millennial.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic.
And Susan, I want to thank you so much for having me on here. I really enjoyed speaking with you as well. And, I love what you're doing, kind of talking to different people in the real estate industry and even just hearing how you're giving back too. I love that. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
This has been another episode of Real Estate Game Changers Radio with your host, Suzanne Doyle-Ingram. To hear all episodes featuring our hand-picked real estate game changers, visit us online at www.realestategamechangersradio.com.